Hi, my loves. Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Dheandra Nicolette. If you're new here, my love, welcome. I'm super excited to have you tuned in for your first ever episode of Manifest Daily. And y'all already know the vibes if you're an OG listener, okay? Hey, girl. Hey, boy. Hey, what's poppin'? What's good? Welcome back to another episode of your faves. So listen, y'all, let me set the scene, okay? I'm setting the scene because this episode is not going to be filmed on camera. When I tell y'all, I am literally sitting here. I am nude. Okay, well, I'm in my robe, okay? So not fully nude, okay? I'm clothed in some way. But it's been quite a morning already. It's actually afternoon now. It's 12:23 p.m. on Sunday and I got back from the gym about an hour ago, so had breakfast, which was definitely very much a lunch. I was craving pizza. When I tell you, I was like, baby, I want me a pizza right now, right now. And there's a California pizza kitchen that's right next to my gym. Y'all, I wandered over there. It was so awkward because like it wasn't even open when I first got over there, and I wandered over there and I was like, "Ooh, I'm gonna wait. Like I'm literally gonna sit in the parking lot for like the next 3, 4, 5 minutes till they open so I can go in and order me a margarita pizza." So that's the vibe. I'm just sitting here. I came back, had my breakfast, took off my sweaty gym clothes, and put on my robe so that I could finish editing the episode that went up last week, which would have been the affirmations episode, money magnet affirmations, abundance affirmations. So if you're someone who's looking for affirmations to help you call in more money, more abundance, that kind of thing, check that one out, okay? Because I think it was really good. I also did a video version on YouTube. But the reason I'm not recording this video on YouTube today is one, because I just don't have the energy for it. I just don't have the energy, if I'm being quite honest with you guys. For anyone that's out there that does YouTube, whether it's part-time, full-time, you do video production at your 9 to 5, anything like that, kudos to you. Okay, snaps, claps, all the applause, because it is not, I mean, I don't want to say it's not easy, because I mean, some days it is. It's not necessarily easy, but it has like a flow to it if you're enjoying it, right? But when I tell you, it takes so much out of you. And for me, one of the things that I try my best to do, and this is like a good tip for any of you guys who are trying to build new habits or incorporate something new into your life, is that if you is gosh, I can't speak, is if you try to eliminate the friction between you, or the friction that it would take for you to do that thing, and make it easier for you to, start it, get into it, do it every day, whatever cadence you choose, you will be more likely to do that thing. So for me, it's like, I love the video production episodes. I think that you guys are enjoying them as well. I've gotten good feedback on them. I know at this point in time in our lives, 2022, podcasts now are so synonymous with YouTube. Like when I first started podcasting, first of all, y'all know how we used to have the podcast app on the Apple phone and ain't nobody knew what that app was? Girl, I used to delete that app. Like, you know when you get the iPhone and it comes loaded with all the apps? Baby, I was like, podcast? What is a podcast? And I would just be deleting that app all the time until I came out with a podcast. I was like, oh, that's what this app is. Like, it literally opened up a whole world to me in terms of education and entertainment. And now we're at a place where podcasting has become so popular, but it's not just audio based. Like people are literally creating these shows and taping them on video in order to reach more audiences, in order to make it more of like a dynamic piece of content, things like that. But it's a lot. And right now I'm in my robe. I was like, okay, I could shower, get ready, do my makeup, put on my wig, sit down on the couch to record this episode. And then the editing for video takes like so much longer. And I was like, to be quite fucking honest with you, I just don't want to. I just don't want to. And it'd be like that sometimes. Like as much as we know motivation is fleeting, I'm here, like, I'm gonna pick and choose my battles for this, because for me, the most important thing is being consistent, at least on the podcasting platforms. And the video, I'm making my way up there, but today was just not the day, okay? Today was just not it. So, my loves, I have been wanting to record this episode for a minute, and I guess, like, I don't know, I was struggling with figuring out how to approach the episode in terms of, like, a particular layout or any particular like topics I wanted to discuss. And I figured that the easiest way for me would just be to sit down and like kind of just ramble and kind of talk and get my points across, because there is no right answer, or there is no specific, well, there is a point that I'm trying to make, but there is no specific point about my life that I've gotten to, or a specific conclusion rather. And that's why I feel like I was struggling to figure out how to deliver an episode like this, because I feel like, one, it's a bit controversial, and two, I'm just not fully there with a particular decision. And in case you haven't figured out by the title of this episode at this point in time, I'm talking about the subject of having kids. And I've talked about this in another episode briefly. I remember talking about it in an episode where I talked about my dating life. I gave you guys an update. I think I was still at home. Yeah, I think I was at home visiting my parents, probably over the holidays. And I remember doing an update on dating and kind of being like, well, I've gotten to this point where I'm just like, I don't even know if I want kids, and I don't even know if I want to get married, and yada, yada. And I do think that there's a part of me that wonders if I am trying to convince myself that I don't want these things, because it seems like I'm struggling to progress in these areas. It's almost like you know when you really want something and it gets to the point where you're like, oh, I don't think I can get it. So you start to try to convince yourself, like, I don't even want that anyways. Like, I don't even want you. Y'all, I see that sometimes. Like, I see the tweets where it's like women who talk about their particular experiences with dating, where it's like they'll kind of brush a guy off. And if you're a guy listening to this is not all men. I'm just talking about some tweets I've seen. But they'll brush, a guy off, and the guy will be like, well, I didn't even want you anyways. So it's like he's trying to convince himself like he didn't want her. It's like, boy, you know damn well you wanted her. Stop playing. Stop lying to yourself. Don't be mad. Don't be mad. Don't be ashamed. Take your L. Keep it moving. Keep it moving. I'm wondering if that's me. I'm like, is it really that I'm truly at this place where I'm opening up this like can of worms to have these discussions with myself because that's where I'm at? Or is it because I'm trying to convince myself I'm there? And I think for the most part, it's not that I'm trying to convince myself. If anything, I'm in this place where I feel very neutral. I actually had a conversation with a friend the other day. We went to brunch and I brought this topic up, and I always get like a little nervous. She's like a newer friend, so I get a little nervous bringing this up. And girl, if you listen, I ain't gonna say your name, but you know who you are. Hey girl, hey. I get nervous because, as a woman, again, we have literally been taught that one of the greatest things that we could ever do in our lifetime is to become a mother. Well, to become a wife and to subsequently become a mother. And I think that's a really damaging thing to teach women. And I say that because while there are lots and lots of women who find really beautiful fulfillment, joy, gratitude for their life in those identities, in being a wife, in being a mother, raising kids, being an aunt, possibly all these different things, I think that we've made it so central to the identity of women that if a woman decides that she does not want to be a wife, or if she does not want to be a mother, that somehow something is wrong with her. And we see this because in literally every TV show you watch, every book you read, like all of these different things were being presented with different scenarios of how someone could identify, especially being a woman. It usually involves them taking on one or both of those roles. And if someone does not take on one or both of those roles in a TV show, in a book, in real life, you find that people around them start to question. It's sort of like, well, when are you going to get married? When are you going to have kids? When are you going to do this? When are you going to do that? I get that sometimes too. And this is no fault to the people around who participate in this. I think there is something where, once you become self-aware of how you're participating in a particular, what's the word I'm looking for? Like how you're participating in a particular, I guess, system in society, once you become self-aware of your own participation, you can then choose the degree to which you participate. However, if someone does not recognize or realize the degree to which they're participating, it is hard for them to actually shift or change their behavior, or to be very self-aware of that, because they have no recognition. They are essentially ignorant to their participation in the first place. And I see that because I've had family members who approach me with that similar conversation of like, when we catch up, it's like, oh, do you have a boyfriend yet? When are you going to do this? Do you plan on doing this? And the conversation is so central to that particular part of how I could or should identify versus asking about my career, asking about my new hobbies, asking about me as a person. Like, how am I doing as a person outside of the goal of being a wife or the goal of being a mother? And so I've just been sitting with that. And like I said, I was having this conversation with a friend and talking to her about this because the more that I get older, or the older I get, I phrase that very weird. The older that I get and the more that I get to know myself and get to know who I am in these different chapters, because we are always evolving and changing and growing. So who we are today is not who we're going to be in 2 years, and certainly isn't who we were 2 years ago. But the older that I get, the more that I start to wonder, do I actually want kids? Sometimes when I sit with that, it makes me so sad to think about, and not from the place of, oh, will I regret that decision? I mean, that plays a part of it too, but more so because I am so afraid that if I get to a place one day in my life where I decide, no, I for sure don't want kids, I maybe want to take specific steps to permanently cut that possibility out of my life, I'm so afraid of what my parents will think. I know my mom doesn't really say it and she doesn't really pressure me in any particular way. And I'm so, so grateful for that. She's a gem in her own ways, right? And she doesn't really pressure me in that way, but I know that she would love grandchildren. I have a friend who just had a baby the other day, and my mom is just like so excited. She's like knitting her all these like baby clothes, and she's doing all these things. And I'm like, I could tell that if that were me, she would be like over the moon with joy. So part of me is sad at the possibility of disappointing her, disappointing my dad. He, again, doesn't pressure me or anything like that. But, again, I could tell that he would be excited as well. I'm nervous about losing friends or drifting from friends, right? Because if everyone in your friend group, or most people in your friend group, are having kids, as a woman, as we get older, our relationships with our friends change, right? And one of the first places where you see that happen is when everyone in your friend group is single, and then everyone starts to couple up. And then when you're like the single person and everyone is coupled up, you kind of feel the pressure more, right? So I'm in most of my friends at this point, I would say like 95% of my friends, I could probably name on one hand the amount of friends that I have that are single as well. Most of my friends are coupled up. There's no, it's a different stage. That's reality. Like they're going to want to spend more time with that person, especially when it's new. It's going to be completely different interactions with your friends when they are coupled versus when they're single. And I stand by that. Like, we all know it's true. We literally all know it's true. So I'm not even going to further explain that. You see that first initial, like, I guess, shift in the relationship dynamic of your friends at that particular stage. And then I think one of the next big shifts is if you have kids, or when your friends start having kids, or when you start having kids and your friends don't, there's a shift. Because now if you're a parent, or if they're a parent and you're not, right? If either one of you guys is a parent and the other person isn't, it's different. Now, their responsibilities are different. The way that they, can allocate their time is different. Their priorities are different. What they want to talk about, what their mind is focused on. If they're a caretaker for literally a newborn child, they're thinking about, and especially if we're talking about a woman and a woman, or if your friend is a woman and she is, the person, breastfeeding and providing a lot of that initial sort of like care to that child. Obviously, fathers play a role, and each relationship, it depends on how they split up those responsibilities, but the mother role is very, very crucial, especially to a newborn child. So when that happens, the dynamics shift in your friendship. You're not going to have the same friendship as you had before. So there is a part of me that's afraid, will I lose friends if I decide I don't want to have kids? All the friends that I have pretty much I would say pretty much all of my friends have kids or want to have kids, and they've decided they're sure about their decision. So there's a part of me that's afraid that in making a decision and deciding not to move forward with that particular path, that it may alienate me from my friends even more. That's another thing. And then there's the other one, which is the societal factor. The way that society tends to want to ostracize single, older women, especially child-free women. We have created, and there's obviously, I guess, struggling with my words today, so please excuse me, but there's no coincidence that we've called it a patriarchal society, right? We have built a society where, no matter how much we are pushing for inclusivity, how much we're pushing for equality, equity across the board in so many different areas, not just when it comes to gender and sex identity. But when we're talking about women and how women have been seen, I guess, historically, and how women are seen today, even though we are in literal 2022, we still have these issues where women are not seen as being enough in many spaces where they should. The one that I always like to highlight, obviously, is the career one, right? Where we talk about how women aren't paid equally for the same work that they do as men who, may have been educated for the same amount of time as them, all these different things. And when you add in the other intersectionality, such as race or age or ethnicity, other pieces to that puzzle, we start to see that there is more to the picture than just, male versus female. We start to see that there are so many levels where equality, unfortunately, does not exist in the way that we would probably want it to exist. And I say probably because some people don't want it to exist. I digress. That's a whole yeah, I feel like I've gone on a whole tangent there. However, having kids, being a mom, being a wife, being a caretaker of sorts, being able to rely on other people or have other people rely on us is a huge part of how society sees us. I apologize. I had to pause the recording for a second. There was like a helicopter or something flying above, and it's like, I don't know if the mic is picking up on this, but I can hear it through my headphones, and it's very loud. Um, I made an episode about this a while back, actually. So it was around the time when Roe v. Wade was overturned. And it was obviously a very emotional time, right? As a woman, I think everyone just felt that heaviness. Some people were celebrating, a lot of people were not. And I recorded an episode touching on my particular experience. And I never released this episode. I never released it, particularly because in like 90% of the episode, I was crying and I kept having to pause and try to record again. And it was quite a bit of a mess. And maybe one day I'll share a snippet of that episode with you guys. But, for now, it's just like I said, quite a bit of a mess. I'm more calm, cool, and collected today. So I think I can share some of that story with you. But I talked about a time where I actually had an abortion. And I don't think I ever shared this on the podcast ever. So that's kind of why it was a big thing. And I also want to say that I didn't share this for the reason that I know that, the whole debate of pro-choice, pro-life is a very political one. It is one that is quite polarizing. And I know you guys come here for transparency, a lot of rawness. A lot of you are going through like similar things, but I didn't necessarily want to share that story and have anyone feel like they couldn't come back and like this was not a safe space for them to return to and listen to me anymore because they found it to be a political space. Because one thing about me, baby, no, it's never gonna be that over here, okay? Period. Okay, this is a heavier episode. I will say that. I want you to feel like this is a safe space for you to come and gather information to create a better life for yourself. I will say obviously based on my decision. If you haven't guessed, I'm pro-choice. And that was my choice to make that decision. I was in a relationship and I ended up getting pregnant. It was one of those things where, again, like a lot of times these things aren't planned. Well, it wasn't planned. It was a situation where my partner and I weren't in a very good space. We weren't in a good space with our relationship. And I think there are a lot of situations where if unplanned pregnancy comes up and you're with a person, it changes everything. It changes everything because now you have to decide, do you go forward with that pregnancy or do you not? And whatever decision you make changes your relationship entirely, forever, moving forward. Like it's going to be 100% changed. And I remember sitting with this decision and having a lot of conversations with God about this decision because at the time I was so sure, because I haven't always been sort of on the fence about kids. I was so sure, when I was younger, and this was just like a few years ago, but I was so sure that I wanted kids. I was like, oh my gosh, I'll be the best mom. Like I'm so excited. I can't wait, and yada, yada. So when this happened, it felt, I don't even know how to describe the feeling. I felt betrayed by my own body because I felt like, on one hand, I've said, yes, I want kids. I'm so excited to have kids, yada, yada, yada. But on the other hand, here I was with a partner where we were having all these arguments and it was the middle of a pandemic and we were struggling as a couple. And I never wanted to have a relationship where I had a child in hopes that that child would bring us together. I never wanted to have a relationship where we stayed together for the kids, but inside we were both dying. We both wanted out, and the kids would feel that because kids feel that. Humans feel that. We are energetic beings. We pick up on that. That will literally make you sick to stay in a relationship, to stay in a space that you have no business being in anymore. So when this happened, I was met with that decision. And so on one hand, again, I was like, I want kids. What if I don't have this child and I can never have children anymore? And on the other hand, I was like, well, what if I go through with this and this literally, and I say this, I say this by recognizing that children are obviously humans and blessings and, all that good stuff. But at the time, to be quite honest with you, I thought, I don't want to have a child and ruin my life. That sounds really harsh. And what I mean by that is not that the child would be like I would not like my child. Like if I chose to have a child in any given situation, I would choose to have a child wholeheartedly. But more so I meant, would I now be, tied to this particular person for the rest of my life? And what if it didn't work out? And what if we were tied to each other for all of our lives? And I just hated that. And what if it made me hate him and hate myself? And that's what I meant by that. Not ever hating my own child, by the way. I just really need you guys to understand that. So long story short, so I ended up having the abortion and it was the right decision. That decision was the right decision. I do not regret that decision in and of itself, but I will say, like I said earlier, it changed everything because now that I made that decision, I was forced to come to terms with why I made that decision and why I felt like I deep down knew that I didn't want to have kids with this person. That happened, relationship ended. Obviously, I'm now single. I'm now here living my life. But when I revisit that particular situation, and I think about it, I'm like, okay, well, I had the abortion because I didn't want to have kids with that particular person. But now I'm like, well, will I ever want to have kids? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I guess, I know people will be like, oh, when you meet the right person, you'll know. When you meet the right person, you'll know. And I was going to separate this into another episode and maybe I still will, but we have this way of making it seem like the right person exists. Like there's one person for everyone. Like if you meet this person, that's it. That's your man. Like You gonna stick beside him. That's him right there. But it's like we all have so many soulmates, right? I don't particularly like to subscribe to the idea that only one person on this earth is like the right person for me. I do think that we have different soulmates. I think that depending on the season of life, the chapter we're in, maybe specific decisions we make, that we can gravitate towards specific soulmates that we need in our life at that moment, that we need to learn a lesson from. And some of those may be ones that you can stay with for a longer period of time, maybe for life, have it be a life partner. Some are just there for a season. The idea and thought that someone could meet a particular person and just know that they're the one that you should have kids with because they are your person, that idea has never, like, I thought I believed in that idea, but I don't think I do anymore, because the person that I was with before, I thought that. I thought that I wanted to have kids with him. I thought that I wanted to marry him. And then things changed, and then that changed. And that's life. There's so many changes that can happen, right? You are always like, the only thing that we can guarantee in this life is change. So maybe it is fear-based, and that's what I'm trying to work through right now. Is this a fear-based thing that I'm like, I'm so afraid of having kids with the wrong person? And that is part of it. You hear so many stories. You hear beautiful stories, right? So I'm not on the internet scouring for like these awful stories, but we've been sold these stories of fairy tales. My issue with some of these is that for a lot of these fairy tales, they seem to place the power and the magic of creating a beautiful life outside of yourself. And I think that obviously community matters. We're social creatures. Friendships matter. The relationships and bonds you have with people in your community matter. Your family matters. But I think that we can create a lot of very fulfilling lives without having specific fairy tale like storylines in our lives. The story of like meeting the right person, settling down, having kids, living happily forever after. We've seen many times that that particular storyline is flawed. A lot of people, they want the storyline more than they want the person. You know what I mean? Like, they are so excited to meet someone, to get married, to get engaged, to get married. I should get married twice. But to have the kids, the white picket fence, the things that we've been taught make a beautiful, perfect life, the American dream, they don't sit to think about who it is that they're actually marrying, who it is that's actually going to be a mother or father to their children, who it is that they're actually hoping to commit to growing with for a lifetime. Because we change, and there are going to be hardships, and there are going to be tough times. And even when you have a child, a lot of times that changes a relationship. Now, whether it changes your relationship to make it stronger, or whether it changes your relationship to force it to bend and break where it was never particularly strong in the first place, that depends on how you enter into that commitment, how you enter into that marriage, how you approach it in the first place. I don't know. I guess I don't know. The whole point, I guess, is that if you are someone who is considering or contemplating or wondering if you want to have kids, and you feel like there is something wrong with you because society has made it so that that should be your dream, that should be what you aspire to, I want you to know that it's okay if you don't know. It's okay if you don't know. It's okay if you think you don't want kids, and then 3 years later you wake up next to someone and you're like, you know what, I want to have kids with this person. Even if it doesn't work out, even if me and that person end up breaking up, I know that I can co-parent with them. I know that they would make a good father. I know that they would make a good person to have a child with. If you do want kids and then you wake up one day, tomorrow, 2 years from now, and you decide you no longer want kids for whatever reason, maybe it's not even a reason. Maybe you just don't want kids. You do not have to explain yourself to anyone. Do not let these people bully you into thinking that you need to have an explanation. Do not let these people bully you into thinking that your explanation, if you do have one, is not good enough. because they're not the person that's going to have to raise that child. You are, you and your partner, or maybe it's you by yourself. And because of that, you get to make that decision. Do I want to do this? We should be making this conversation a bigger conversation. We should be acknowledging the true responsibilities of childbearing. I don't know, maybe I'm not sure about y'all, but I feel like it's just not seen as heavy as it truly is. Like children are people. If you have a child and you know, we're all obviously still always healing, but if you are not, haven't worked through certain particular traumas, your partner hasn't, and you know, you're bringing this child into chaos, I don't think that's fair. I honestly don't think that's fair. So, I mean, and that's my opinion. That's my opinion, because let's be honest, people do it all the time. And then we have this perpetual cycle of chaos, a perpetual cycle of people who are traumatized. And we're all going to, you know, I guess traumatize our children to an extent, because again, there are things that we're still healing from, things that we're not self-aware about, things that even if you try to tiptoe your way through raising a child, you still will inflict some trauma on them in some way, shape, or form, something they'll have to go to therapy for later on in, you know, in their life, something they'll have to work through. But the idea is trying your best to understand, to minimize, to really sit with that decision of bringing a child into the world and knowing that, you know, yeah, babies, you know, are cute and this and that and the other, but like that's a whole person. That's a whole person. And that person may not share your opinions when they grow up. That person may end up being someone that, like, no matter how you raise them, no matter what beliefs you want them to have, no matter what you want them to do as your child, they are their own person. They are their own person. They are not your prisoner. They are literally their own person. So, yeah, I think the conversation of children needs to become more of a conversation. We need to stop assuming if someone, especially if you're assuming someone presents as a heterosexual female, and you're just going to assume that they are going to want a child because of how they present, what you think their identity is. I mean, like, we have to make this a broader conversation of really allowing people the space, the safe space to ask themselves these questions and to sit with that and to know it's okay to not know. It's okay to not know. And especially, you know, the climate that we're in, like the literal climate. I actually was watching this movie yesterday. I still got to finish it. I'm like halfway through. I think it's called like Moonfall or something. Halle Berry's in it. It came out like, I think it came out 2021 or 2022, maybe earlier this year. I don't think it was in theaters for that long, which is surprising because I feel like it's a pretty good movie so far. I'm about halfway through it. But essentially it's this movie about the moon's rotation shifting. So the gravitational pull that it has on Earth ends up becoming stronger. And so it's causing tsunamis, it's causing earthquakes, it's causing all these different climate changes. And, you know, that may not be our literal reality right now, but there's so many things that are happening in our climate. And yes, things have always happened, right? As humans, there've always been wars. There've always been, you know, periods of famine, periods of sickness, different climate changes, things that we have dealt with. And we are a very resilient people. We continue to procreate. We continue to survive despite all the things that we faced as a people, as a collective. But that's another one that I always think about too, is like, I don't know, this world that we're in right now. It's like sometimes I feel like I'm struggling to even like want to be here anymore. And I'm like, I don't know. Would it even be fair for me to bring a child into this world and be like, oh, hey, yeah, like everything around you is burning. And like, you know, there are shootings like every single day in the US and like all this is happening. So here you go. Good luck. I don't know. Anywho, my loves, I feel like this is a quite heavy episode. So I really hope that it at least helped someone who maybe is in a similar place with this conversation to know that it is a safe space to be in, to not know. And one thing that I've been doing that's actually been helping me is just having more of these conversations and just trying to remove the stigma from these conversations. So I've had this conversation with like my mom, I've had this conversation with some friends recently, and I'm having this conversation with you guys and just trying to really destigmatize this idea that, you know, not knowing if you want kids, like just destigmatizing that whole idea and making sure that we all know that if you are questioning or if you have decided that you do not want kids, and maybe if you've decided that you don't want a traditional marriage, a traditional like wedding, that's okay too. I have so many other thoughts on that as well. Y'all, is it my Aquarius rising? Is it showing? I feel like it's showing. My Aquarius rising is showing because I'm just like, I don't like the way we do everything. I'm like, burn it all down, fix it, change it. Cause like, baby, we can't keep doing the same ass shit. Like, I'm tired of it. I'm so tired of it. Anyways, my loves, I mean that in a good way. Like, I think it's time, and I think we're seeing that too. It's just time for just restructuring, rethinking, reframing, just completely changing and shifting our perception of everything that we know. And I don't know. I feel like we've been seeing that happen gradually over time too. So I'm excited. I hope you guys really enjoyed this episode. Like I said, I hope for someone who's maybe in this particular place that I hope it helps you with some of your thoughts. And if you are someone that has decided you want kids and that you, or maybe you have kids already, I love that for you. And I want to just kind of give you your claps and snaps because, again, that's a huge responsibility. So for you to decide to take on that responsibility and do so excitedly, do so bringing amazing children into this world, literally raising the future, that's amazing. Like, I literally look at moms and I'm like, wow, like, wow, that's actually that's like beyond a job. That's like 5 full-time jobs in one. So congrats to you. And I love that for you. So my loves, thank you so much for being here and for listening, for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, I would love if you could leave a 5-star review for the podcast on Apple or Spotify, since we're not on YouTube for this particular episode. And I'll be back with the video episodes. Definitely not in my robe. Definitely, with my hair and makeup done on another day. Until then, go check out that video affirmations episode on YouTube or on the podcast, as well as on Apple, Spotify, all the things. And I will see you guys and chat with you guys very soon. Have a beautiful day, my loves. Bye.